here and talk to you and get to know you a little bit.
Yeah,
So
my pleasure, yeah.
I'm going to dig in and ask the deep, dark, good questions.
Okay, let's see how
Okay, I'll start light and then we'll go a little further.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, all right. So let's talk a little bit about Naked and Afraid first. Let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you experienced on the show. Tell me what was the most difficult thing that you had to experience on the show physically.
Our feet. Our feet are so exposed, and we're so pampered. We're used to, I mean, even Birkenstocks are incredibly, incredibly soft to walk around in. It's usually what I walk around myself all the time. And you'd be surprised how pampered your feet are in shoes and whatnot.
Soft
but take your shoes off for 10 minutes and go walk through uneven ground on uneven surfaces without grass or sticks or leaves. And tell me if you want to do that for 3 weeks or 7 weeks. It's painful. It's very, very painful.
That does sound painful. I mean, I know that just sometimes walking through some gravel to get my nail when I'm barefoot, I'm like, ow, ooh, ah, ooh. So yeah, I can imagine 21 days of that would not be super fun.
No, it's very painful. It takes a lot out of you. I was very surprised at how that was the biggest problem I had to deal with in all of the Naked and Afraid shows that I've done.
So you learned this on the first show.
Yep.
So when you went to the second show, did you do anything to prepare for that?
Yes, the one thing that I did is I wanted to make sure that my feet were not going to be a problem, because I broke 3 of my toes on my right foot on day 4 on the first one, and one was broken at a very harsh 45-degree angle, so it caused a lot of pain for the rest of the time that I was out there. And I was like, nope, this time I don't care what happens to me, it's not going to be my feet. So in the middle of New England, where we're getting all these blizzards, I built this box that was 4 feet long by 3 feet wide and 6 or 7 inches high, and I filled it with seashells and crushed bluestone like the size of my thumb, and I just walked around it until my feet, like my feet were bleeding the first couple of days from the shells. I would go to step out of it, and they would all be stuck to the bottom of my foot. I had to pick them out of my feet for the first couple of days until the calluses built up.
Right.
And I was like, phew. And then when I got there,
no pedicures for you.
Huh?
No pedicures for you.
No pedicures for me. No, that's not going to happen.
Well, so now let's go a little deeper. Let's talk about the emotional difficulties of being in a situation where you are essentially by yourself. You're meeting someone for the first time that you don't know anything about them. They don't know anything about you. Tell me emotionally, what were some of the difficulties and the hardships that you faced?
One of the biggest things is I'm a bit of a loner. I do a lot of extreme sports around the world, and I've traveled the whole world, but most of my sports are solo sports. So having to work with somebody else that I don't know, I've got friends and stuff that I do a lot of my sports with, but meeting a total stranger that I don't know anything about, I don't know any of their idiosyncrasies, I don't know what their strengths and weaknesses are, emotionally speaking.
Right.
Obviously all of us that are put on, Naked and Afraid have the skill set to survive there.
One would hope.
Well, one would hope. But the emotional aspects of trying to integrate with that person is very difficult. They've got walls, I've got walls, they've got lives that are making them come. Some are married, some have kids, and so they're uncomfortable being naked, uncomfortable cuddling with you at night to try to generate body heat, because I need the body heat at night from that person. And so there's all of these little dynamics that you're working with, and that is very, very difficult, trying to support the other person while trying to integrate 2 personalities together. Does create, I think, the bigger problems.
I can imagine that would be difficult, I think a lot of the societal norms that we have and the way that we've been conditioned to think and feel about certain things would cause difficulties when you're out in a situation, when you're naked and you're with someone else who's naked and, oh gosh, what is my family going to say when they see this on television and
what
things
do they
like that.
look like?
Right,
how
sure.
do they walk,
I mean, goodness, everybody has things about themselves that they're not,
exactly.
super happy about,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. We all have our moments, yeah.
So I think, that there are times, I think, like that you would really be feeling that vulnerability and perhaps awkwardness and would have a hard time with that connection with that other person because they're feeling all of those same things.
That is the biggest awkwardness of it. A lot of people want to focus on the fact that we're both standing there naked in front of each other and it's a male and female, but that isn't as awkward as you think it is. The more awkward part is, how do I work with this person's personality? What are their personality traits? What are their strengths and weaknesses emotionally? Right. So that I can work together. Because when you're all alone and you are naked on more than one level, emotionally, physically, clothing-wise, everything, I need the support of that person at some point, during the challenge. And oftentimes you don't get it because of the problems with that particular dynamic.
So how do you prepare for something like that emotionally?
What I did was I went to all of my female friends and I said, if you were stuck naked in front of a guy that you never met before, how would you like that guy to treat you? you know. And I went to a lot of different women, not just, you know, even my friends, like my friends' wives, friends of friends, like all females, because I wanted to get a good background, you know, test subject, so to speak, to get an example of how would I treat that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, you know. I still, again, I'm still taking a sample pool and trying to apply it to someone that I've never met before.
And sometimes you just don't know. I mean, I think if you were to ask me that question, you know, I'd really have to think long and hard about it. You know, I'm usually great off the cuff, you know, with answers like that. But I think, you know, in that situation, I have to really think about how would I feel, what would I want them to think, you know, well, how would I want them to treat me, you know.
Agreed.
And that's difficult because now you're talking about two different genders and they think and feel differently as well.
Correct.
So I think that was a good idea.
But unlike a dating scene or a social circle scene where you are choosing to be with this person, I may never in my lifetime choose to be around that person that I'm with, and now I'm stuck with them. Not only am I stuck with them for the duration of the challenge, but I'm naked in front of that person too. And so those can be problems as well. So.
But let's talk about you for a minute.
Sure.
So, okay, this is a great segue into, you know, a little bit of what I know about you. Because let's dig even a little deeper.
Sure.
Your past and your life and getting to where you are today seems to me to have been very preparatory for this type of experience. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I grew up in foster homes and boarding schools without parents. My parents kicked me out of the house when I was 6 years old. And I spent 13 years in 5 foster homes and 4 institutional boarding schools with a lot of psychotherapy, with a lot of, you know, all kinds of dynamics with that. You know, they put me in my first school, you know, when I was 6, and I was a rambunctious, maybe a little wild child. But my dormitory mates were all 16, 17, 18 years old. You take a 6-year-old kid and put him in a dormitory with 45 people who are basically borderline delinquents. I was a problem child when I went in. I was a full-blown asshole when I got out. There was no choice but to become that way because of the abuse that bullies would put you under, right?
I mean, so you were put in a position very early on where you really had to sink or swim. You had to survive, and there was no one else to look out for you but yourself.
Right.
So that reliability on yourself was really important. And I think that when you look at that and you look at the experience that you have going into Naked and Afraid, that probably was a huge asset to you.
I think it did help me a lot on that. And then I didn't handle myself very maturely on the first one. I exploded and I was very volatile and upset all the time over some of those dynamics. But as I become more mature, and I'm thankful for the 2 challenges to help me grow, because, you know, the title of my autobiography is Growing Up, Institutionalized Globetrotting. I'm still trying to make myself a better human being with all of the things that happen around me. That's always been my focal point. So I'm thankful for, you know, growing up and learning. What we're talking about here is how to work with others, how to be humble, how to build them up for a total stranger, and how to make them feel more comfortable around me. And it doesn't always work that way, but, you know, at least from my perspective, I think that I'm trying to do that.
So what would you say to a child that's in that system today? What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say that don't let the system tell you the totality of that situation dictate the rest of your life, because it is such a small aspect of your life. I mean, look at me, you know, I mean, I've traveled all over the world. I've seen things that, you know, very few humans will ever see. And if you were to say that 10-year-old kid, whoever met me when I was 10, that this is what that kid was going to be like, everybody would tell you not a chance.
I think that's so powerful. You know, I remember a long time ago I was watching Oprah, of all things, and there was a man on Oprah. He was in his 60s, and he was telling a story about how he had been abused as a child, and how that singular experience ended up defining and railroading his life, essentially, to that point. How everything he did, everything that happened to him, every experience that he had, it pretty much dictated his life, and it ruined his life, essentially. And I remember thinking, and I was in my 20s when I saw this episode, and I remember thinking, that is so sad that this person could go through an experience that was that horrible, that they would let it define who they were for the rest of their lives, or for a majority of their lives. And I made a decision at that point that I would never let anything bad that happened to me change who I was or define my life.
That is a very commendable
like
decision.
And for me, it has been a decision. And I think that you've made that decision perhaps not as cognitively, but you've taken those experiences and you came to a point where you said, enough is enough.
Yeah.
I need to pull up my bootstraps and I need to figure it out and I need to grow up.
It took me a little bit longer than my 20s.
It's okay.
Me
not everyone can be as mature as I am.
No, we can't. Some of us can't be that mature. I try hard. In my late 30s, I started to realize that. And one of the defining moments was that I had all of this animosity and frustration about how the world had treated me, who were my caretakers. You know, I mean, obviously the state of Connecticut was my legal guardian. And then I had all of this animosity and built up frustration over it, and I did take it out on the world a lot. I did have a big F you ripped across my head for probably 15 to 20 years. It was bad. But when I started making decisions, because I have a lot of empathy for humans, I mean, I'm a misanthrope, but as the individual, I really try hard to make sure that when people come my way or they come in my path, that they are built up, that they're loved, they feel supported, and I have a tremendous amount of empathy for humans because I've experienced so much.
Right.
And so,
of course, you would understand.
Right, and that's a big thing for me. So when I started making decisions, because my heart is good, I may not always make the right decision, and I can be a little off the cuff and fly off the handles, and people can think that I'm tyrannical that way, but it's not. The empathy is still there. That's just me. You know, it's just getting the best of me in that moment. So once I started making decisions that had adverse effects on other people's lives that I never intended, like I would say something and be like, wow, I didn't think that comment would make you feel this way for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Then I started to look back at my youth and be like, all right, maybe I don't have the angst and the level of anger towards my caretakers because I don't think they were cognitively trying to set up the situation so that all of these awful things that happened to me would happen.
Right.
They were just side things that happened.
Right.
And so I started to learn and gain more respect and empathy for my caretakers. When that happened, I think the maturity level really changed.
I think that's so important. You know, so many people live in this bubble that they think that everything that they do is just happening to them. And people don't always realize that the choices that you're making actually do affect other people or do touch other people. No man is an island.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Even on Naked and Afraid.
No
man is an island. And I think, you know, a lot of people don't realize that when you say something or you do something, you're having a consequence. You know, a consequence is happening. That could be a positive consequence.
Right.
That could be a negative consequence.
Or both.
But there are consequences to every choice and decision that we make. And we can't dictate what those are.
I agree. Regardless of how altruistic your cognitive frame of mind is when you're making those decisions, you could be making the best decision that you think in the world, and the outcome could be catastrophic to somebody else, and it's unforeseen.
True.
When those things started to happen from my actions, I became much more mature.
I think that's really commendable. I think it's commendable that you could go through all of these different things and you could take those experiences and you could self-reflect. I think, you know, self-reflection is really important, and I don't think enough people do that.
I agree with you 100%. I think we are living in a super uber narcissistic world where we have completely lost what it means to be humans.
Yeah.
We are so self-absorbed with our social media stuff, and it occupies a lot of our time and our attention.
And there's a difference between being self-absorbed and self-reflective.
Correct.
Because when you self-reflect, you're looking at your behaviors and you're trying to make them better as you're connecting with the world.
Correct.
But when you're self-absorbed, you don't care about what those actions do to everyone else around you.
Exactly. And I think that's a huge problem that we're losing as a species in today's society. We're losing the care for our fellow citizens because of our own self-absorption. And I'm guilty of it too. You know.
I mean, I don't think anyone's perfect, and sometimes you do get caught up in those things. But if you're able to step back for a second and say, wait a minute, I think maybe I haven't been very good here. Let's pull it back for a second and continue to move forward. I think, you know, what you were telling me about your experience with the first Naked and Afraid and then the second, it seems that you watched yourself, thought about what happened, what you were seeing, and then you kind of segued it into a different you know, for the second time around, so that you could improve upon what you had seen.
Right. I wanted to be more mature and more supportive of my teammates on the second time around, regardless of the situation that was going on around me. And I think I was very successful getting that across, that I was trying to be, trying to selflessly work as opposed to being super selfish in the first one.
So yeah, so on self-reflection, I think, I do that a lot. I actually, differently than you, I actually did grow up with a very caring mother who actually talked to me a lot, which is why I think I was able to have those thoughts in my 20s and kind of get there a little faster, because my mother spent a lot of time talking to me as an adult. You had to do this solo. You had to do this on your own. And I understand that at one point you decided to write a book, and I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I did it from a cathartic purpose. I wrote the book from a cathartic point of view. I didn't ever in my imagination think I'd be on television for anything. I was already near 40 years old. I was just bringing around this, 20-year baggage around with me, and it was affecting my relationships with not just females, but males, friends, whatever, and I was like, I've had enough of this. I've been carrying it around so long. I don't want this burden anymore. And my only issue has always been that no one has ever respected what I had to say about the situation. They always talked to me, but never, or talked at me, but not to me, whether they be, my caretakers or my parents or anyone around me. They all talked to me or talked at me. So I thought, for once I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write a book. I think I'm mature enough now to be able to write it and make it a cathartic experience.
Sure.
I wanted to get rid of it. I wanted to really write my side of the story, how I was emotionally thinking, how I was feeling, what I was thinking, what I was going through, what my brain process was going through when I was making some of the decisions that ultimately had some adverse effects on my own life.
Right.
And so that's the reason why I wrote it. And the first half is very difficult to read because it's the first half of my life growing up, without parents and moving around so much. And then the second half is about me finding who I am, becoming a man, becoming mature, becoming empathetic for other humans, and traveling around the world, which really changed my life. I spent 3 years in third world countries and just...
And what did you do when you were there?
I just wanted to, it was cultural immersion. I wanted to become a better human being, and I thought the only way that I could do that was by traveling around the world, dropping myself into these cultures for months. I didn't go for weeks.
I love that. I really think that we have a bit of an epidemic in this country where so many people just do not understand different cultures. They are very intolerant of people that are not like them, and I think that in order to really be able to be empathetic, you need to be able to study and be a part of other cultures, and you need to be able to respect them, understand them, and understand that they're not like you, and find the beauty in that. And I think so many people just miss out because they don't realize how beautiful that can actually be.
I agree, and that's something that I try to tell people is how beautiful the other cultures are. They may not have the amenities that we do in some Western civilization countries, and they may not have the social structures that we do, or some of the other things that we have, but I'll tell you a great story. I was in Tanzania. I went to a Maasai place, Maasai area, and I was just hanging out with them, and the guy came over and asked me where I was from, and I said I was from America, and he said, which part, north, central, or south? And I was like, I just got schooled by a guy that's probably never left a bush village in his entire life.
Yes. So many people forget that.
Yep.
Americans get so, I'm American.
Yep.
But you know what? So are South Americans,
yep.
and so are Central Americans,
yep.
and so are Canadians,
yep.
by the way. Canadians are Americans
yep.
too.
That's correct.
And yeah, people totally forget that.
Yep.
My mother is an immigrant from South America, so I come from a Latin American background. So my mother immigrated to the United States when she was in her 20s. And so I was raised multicultural in my home, and I am married to a man who's from Australia, so now I have this other culture, and his mother's from South Africa, and so there's just a lot of multiculturalism in my family, and so I really love that you were saying that, because traveling is something that I'm very passionate about, and when we had children, that was one of the first things we did. All my children have passports.
Nice.
We've taken them all out of the country before. They're all very well traveled for being as small as they are, and I think that that's important. They need to see what other people are doing, how other people are living, how other cultures are different than ours, so that they can understand how blessed they are as well. But also see the differences.
Yeah, I agree, and the blessing part is good, but I think the biggest thing is that what I learned most is that the other cultures and the other people, they have jobs, they have families, they go to school, they're raising their kids, they have social structures, they have all this stuff that's going on, and they don't have half of what we have.
It's true, and they're happy.
And they're much happier than we are.
And they're happy.
Much happier people than we are. And we've got everything, and we're miserable. And that's something that really burns me a lot, traveling around. It's very hard to deal with. Because I'll go out of the country, and I'll be in Ethiopia or somewhere, and people will invite me to their house, and they'll sleep on the floor in their house, in their apartment. And I'll sleep in their one bed that they got. And I'll be like, wow, I can't even get my next door neighbor to say hello to me in the morning when we're getting mail together. I'm like, really?
They don't even know your name.
They don't know my name.
It's true.
Yep.
You live next to these people for all of this time, and they don't ever want to get out of their box, right? They don't want to know who you are. And I think that that's something that we could certainly improve upon in this country.
I agree, and I think a lot of the problems with the arrogance of American Western civ is the fact that only 15% of Americans have a passport.
That's true too.
And I heard a ridiculous stat, like 60% of Americans have not even left the hometown that they were born in.
You know, so
and that
true. That's
that
crazy
will create
to me.
arrogance, because you'll be like, well, I'm the center of the universe, and this is perfect, and the world,
well, and
honestly,
I've heard people say,
the world will function just fine. If America disappeared tomorrow, the world will be just fine.
But I've heard people say, well, I don't need to go anywhere else. It's perfect right here. And I thought, well, but you aren't going to know that unless you go out to see everything.
I agree. Yeah.
So,
and they love the people that you meet. Like, amazing people. They're smart. They love their families, and they take care of their kids and make sure they've got meals together, and they've got nothing.
It's so hard for me because everywhere I go, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love it here, I have to come back. And my husband's like, but if we come back, we don't see other things. And I'm like, and so he'll be like, it is a
trade-off. There are only a couple places.
Oh, I gotta come back. And he's like, you say that everywhere we go. And I have to tell you, I have never been to a place I didn't love, even Detroit. You know, like, I can find positivity and beauty in every place that I go to, and things that are interesting to me. And I think that that's part of the multiculturalism that I was raised in. You know, that I was taught to see that beauty everywhere. You know, I don't have boundaries when it comes to beauty. And I think that so many people do. If you ask someone, well, what is beautiful? They're going to give you a list of what they think is beautiful. And I just think it's such a wider... I just don't think there are boundaries to that.
No, there isn't any boundaries. There's no boundaries in anything, in reality, I think.
So, you have had quite the life. You've had the parts of your life that were not that great. You've had the parts of your life that have been amazing and have helped shape who you are today. But I want to know, and I know everyone listening wants to know, what does the future hold for Shane? What does the future hold for you? What are your dreams? Where do you see yourself?
My dreams, man. I love working in television, and the reason why is not for the money or the fame or even the notoriety of it. What I love about it is that no one is filtering me. No one's saying, I can't believe you just said that.
But they do edit you.
That's okay. They can edit me all they want. But they are like, we don't want to slow you down. We don't want to curb you. And everyone's always been like, Shane, calm down. Shane, you can't say that in public. Shane, you can't do this. Shane, you can't do that. And everyone's like, go. We don't care.
Just be you.
Just be you. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. You know, I mean, it took me 43 years to get to a point where people are like, yeah, we're just going to let you go and videotape it. And that I love. So I'm hoping to be able to continue working in the media industry on some level at some point.
What about personally? What's in that? What's in your soul? What's in your heart? This is the Diane Sawyer part of my interview. I'm trying to elicit tears, emotions.
Yeah, tears don't work well with me, but it's okay.
Dig deep. What do you want?
Dig deep, honestly? I would like to know what it feels like to have unconditional love from a woman. I'm still an orphan whose mother doesn't want him. I've got millions of fans worldwide. I'm on a TV show that has astronomical numbers, and my own family hasn't even said one word to me.
Wow.
Not one word.
Wow.
So, yeah, at some point before I die, I would like to know what it feels like to have the unconditional love of a woman.
What do you think about being a parent?
I never wanted to be because when I was 12, I wrote about it in my book, my biological father was in the same institution that I was in. And my therapist brought up his file and read a few things to me, and he talked just like I did. So I decided at 12 that I was going to cut the bloodline off and not torture another kid. Because if he was there and I was there, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to put another human being is not going to suffer like this. So I didn't. But my views have been changing.
Well, you've been changing.
Right.
You've been changing. I'm sure that if you were to sit face to face with your biological father, he may still be very similar to who he was because he hasn't had the time to self-reflect. But you have, and you have made different choices.
I have Yes, I'm very pleased with how far I've come considering where I was. I'm still not perfect, and I'm never going to be perfect, and I think that's the beauty of being human.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't want to be around a perfect human. We're already pretty arrogant as it is. Could you imagine if we were perfect? We would be intolerable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's funny, when I look back on my own past, you know, like, people will say to me, you know, do you regret anything? Do you have any regrets? And I think to myself, no. Does that mean I was perfect?
Right.
No. Does that mean that I didn't do things that I probably
Right.
shouldn't have done?
Right.
Absolutely not. I definitely did those. But all of those decisions have made me who I am today and have given me life experience that other things won't give me, right?
I agree.
So I really think that as difficult as some things have been, or as crazy as I might have been, or all of those things, I think, you know, I am who I am because of all of those things that have preceded me, and that's what I have to offer the world. And I think that you're at that place. You're like, okay, this is who I am. This is what I have to offer the world, naked and afraid. And, you know, there you are.
I am very content with that for the first time in my life. Like, I'm totally content with who I am. I love who I am. I like who I am. I like the empathy that I have for other people.
Let me tell you, I appreciate your being clothed for this interview.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to embarrass anyone. We don't want to embarrass anyone.
I do appreciate that. You know,
Thanks.
I'm not at that place yet where I think I could do an interview with someone who was naked. You never know. I mean, I could roll with the punches.
I've had some producers, like one of my producers on one of the shows, she came up and she wanted to touch me. And then she was like, oh, right, he's naked. And they didn't realize it, like, until she actually had to get my attention. She'd be like, hey, Shannon, I need you to do this, or we'd like this to happen, or can you put a mic on, or can you do that? And she's like, every time I try to touch you, then I realize, oh, you're naked.
How do they put a mic on a naked person?
This is our mic.
Oh.
And the cord runs down through that black sash, the burlap bag, and the transmitter's in that burlap bag.
Okay.
So that's our microphone.
Interesting.
Yeah, it can be a little bit interesting. So.
You're like, where did that wire go?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
No, it's okay.
I might not be kidding, but that's okay.
I'll tell you how they make them waterproof, you'd be laughing your butt off.
Well, you know, we don't have to go there, but if you want to tell me.
Well, they wrap them in condoms, and I talked to the sound guy, and he said, how do you think I feel when I go to the store and I buy 300 condoms at a store? And I'm like, yeah, that's got to go over real well at the register.
Hysterical.
Hysterical.
That's hysterical.